We all sat at this upscale, my friend, his wife, my other friend, and myself. This restaurant, sometime earlier this year. The previous day was his wife's birthday, so she demanded we just have a hangout the following day. It was the waitress bringing all manners of food and drinks to our table. The music was cool and slow. A couple of minutes later, it was his wife excusing herself to use the restroom. I was munching when my friend tapped my knee and said to our hearings, "Take a look, they are toasting my wife." We all turned. It was a young man. Must be in his early 20s. Yellow pants, yellow shoes, and a white shirt. My friend's wife is in her mid-30s, we watched, smiling. I could see my friend's wife pointing at her wedding ring and our table. The young man was shrugging and pointing at her phone. My friend's wife simply laughed, collected his phone and dialed her number. The young man smiled and put a finger on his cheek, indicating that he'd call her. We all watched. The courage. My friend's wife laughed and headed back to our table. Then took a deep sigh. Children of nowadays. All these Yahoo boys, shooting shots at their aunties. What an audacious move. Can you imagine? I told him I am married. He still insisted on my number. We all looked at her husband. The only question he asked after he smiled briefly was, "Did you give him your number?" His wife shrugged. "You should know me by now." I gave him your number. I smiled and continued eating. Just then his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He knew it was the guy, so he passed the phone over to his wife. His wife picked and put it on speaker. We heard his voice. It was husky, as he said, "Hi, Angel, this is my number. I am looking at you and smiling. I am at that table at the window with my niggers. Your beauty is something else, and my niggers said married women are sweeter. That your husband does not deserve you. Does he even satisfy you? I guess he doesn't." We were quiet. Her husband only smiled and continued enjoying his meal. His wife said, "Please, I need to go now." "Okay." She dropped the call on him and shook her head in disappointment. Her husband just held her hand and smiled brightly at her. "It's okay." Shortly later, a tuxedo waiter walked to our table with a bottle of wine on a tray. He placed it before his wife and pointed at the window and said, "That young man over there said I should give it to you." My friend's wife said, "Oh," looked back and waved at the young man. The young man waved at her with a smile while his friends hailed him for his nerves of approaching a married woman in front of her husband. We could hear them as they said, "Money stops nonsense." My friend just smiled. I knew that smile. If they knew who he is. Then the waiter said again, "Ma'am, he also said you should take anything you want, he will pay." "Ah, thank you so much." My friend looked at his wife, scratched his white beard, and said to me, "That boy has nerve. We will show him how it feels." So it was him ordering more food, more expensive drinks, and snacks, and also takeaways for his kids at home. Puzzled, I said to him, "Our table is filled. Things here are freaking expensive. Are you going to pay for all this?" Our other friend agreed with me. He smiled and said to me, "Chill, guys." Just then he asked the waiter to prepare our bills. The bill came a minute later. My friend opened it, and I saw the figures and adjusted calmly in my seat. 96,900 nairas. He looked at us and said, "Let's make it 100,000. What do you think?" His wife nodded. "Yes, honey." He demanded one extra something for the kids. The waiter packaged it and adjusted the bill. It was now over 100,000. My friend handed the bill over to the waiter with a peaceful smile. "Please, give it to that young man at that extreme." "Thank you." He stood immediately with his wife. "Guys, let's go." We all stood. He held his wife, kissed her, while the other waiter followed us with the takeaways, and walked past the young man, who was now staring at the bill the waiter presented to him. His hands were shaking, confused. He was sweating under the chilling restaurant. He was staring at my friend as they held each other and not looking at him as they walked out of the restaurant. We were barely close to the garage when the young man started approaching us. His eyes were hazy, and his voice was trembling. "Excuse me, sir. Please, sir. Sorry, sir. I didn't know it was your wife. Oh my God. The bill is too much for me, sir. They have taken my iPhones. Can we negotiate the bill, sir? I am very sorry, sir." My friend ignored him as though he wasn't the one he was talking to. He held his wife while he opened his car and said to her, "Honey, are sure we don't need something else? We can always add it to that bill." That boy looks like a rich kid. His wife laughed. Then my friend turned to the waitress and said, "Please, let's add extra meals to the takeouts. That short young man that approached my wife will take care of the bill." The young man fell to his knees and burst into tears. "Oh no, sir, please. Don't do this to me.